The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change gives us roughly 5 years to make major changes, and our musical oasis is disappearing. Our musical community is increasingly outside the pale. We continue to use threatened and endangered tree species in the name of art, but music cannot supersede ecosystems. Climate change is making that obvious. We need to change. Along the interstate, in a field near Burlington, Vermont, there is a statue of 2 whales' tails. They remind us of our interconnection to ecosystems we don't see. 10,000 years ago, the beluga whales in the statue lived in the Champlain Sea. The average temperature was only 11 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, but it was an ice age. As the temperatures warmed, the sea became Lake Champlain, and the whales migrated north over thousands of years to the Saguenay Fjord, roughly 500 miles north, near Quebec City. Today, we live near Burlington in a temperate hardwood forest with sugar shacks on several of our neighbors' land. We make maple syrup in the sugar shacks. Since 1900, the temperature has warmed 3 degrees Fahrenheit. They predict, with current warming trends, our current forest ecosystem will disappear in another 60 to 80 years, too fast for our trees to adapt or migrate north. The sugar shack will go next to the whale's tails. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has set a limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius for temperature rise by 2030. If we miss that goal, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, scientists tracking endangered species, estimates roughly 11,000 species will go extinct by the end of the century. Quote, in addition to their intrinsic value, species play essential roles in ecosystems, which in turn provide vital services to humans. Climate change interacts with threats such as habitat loss and overharvesting to further exacerbate species declines. The decline of species and ecosystems can then accelerate climate change, creating a feedback loop that further exacerbates the situation. This is where genetic diversity comes in. Genetic diversity is the lifeline for species to survive and adapt to pests, disease, and hopefully climate change. For example, trees can't migrate quickly, so scientists are exploring the possibility of assisted migration. Basically pulling on genetic diversity within a species, scientists are physically relocating those genes to the areas they think they will be needed. For example, at the University of Vermont, scientists are moving red spruce trees from warmer climates in the southern Appalachians to New England because they have a genetic advantage in a warmer climate. The smaller the population, the smaller the gene pool, the less likely the species is to survive. How does this impact ebony? First, what is ebony and where does it come from? Ebony is a common name for a dense black tropical hardwood. It is not one species, or, for you botanical geeks like me, it isn't even from a single genus or family. The trees have usually come from the Indian Ocean region, ranging from Madagascar in southern Africa, up through Central and Eastern Africa, over to India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and down to Australia. Then jump over to South and Central America. Maple has been used to build the scroll and neck to match the back and ribs of string instruments, but it is not strong enough to withstand the tension from the strings on modern instruments. Ebony would have been an accessible tropical hardwood in Europe with the strength to reinforce the maple necks. It was being used for luxury cabinet making in Europe as early as the 1500s. Our attraction to the black color probably stems from the luxury association of the wood. It has no bearing on its structural properties. Engineers have devised ways to measure specific types of strength in wood. Bending strength is the load or weight the wood can withstand perpendicular to the grain. Basically, how much weight can you hang on a peg before it breaks? Stiffness, or modulus of elasticity, indicates how much the wood will sag when a load is applied perpendicular to the grain. How far will the shelf sag if you put a really heavy book on it? Hardness reveals how resistant the surface of the wood is to scratches, dents, and other abuse. Compressive strength tells us how much of a load a wood species can withstand parallel to the grain. So if you add weight on top of a table leg, when will it buckle? Ebony and other tropical hardwoods discussed later rate highly on all four strengths. The music industry is considered the largest consumer of ebony. Unfortunately, the music industry's increasing rate of consumption has far outpaced the regeneration rate of ebony. Ebony trees can take 80 to 100 years, some species longer, to mature. The density of the wood is a product of the slow growth relative to the less dense, faster maturing temperate hardwood species. As technology has increased our production and ability to cut more trees more quickly, we have moved from region to region, decimating the populations of these species. Commercial overuse has led to the threatened status of ebony species country by country. In Madagascar alone, 114 species are listed on Appendix 2 by CITES. Increasing demand has led to persistent illegal logging. As a result, from Africa to Australia, logging of different ebony species is being regulated or banned altogether. As sources of ebony become illegal, makers complain of decreased quality and more inconsistency in ebony material they are purchasing. Illegal logging is increasing. Species are being listed as threatened, and yet we continue to move from species to species of ebony. What are the alternatives? Sustainable sourcing, alternative hardwoods, which I compare to Monty Python's The Holy Grail, man-made alternatives. Let's start with sustainable sourcing. This is particularly pertinent for luthiers working in or selling to the European Union, given the new European Union deforestation regulation, which will require documentation that wood products contain sustainably sourced wood. Before we can consider sustainable sourcing, we must acknowledge the myth that ebony is black. Ebony is not always black. As Bob Taylor of Taylor Guitars noted, 9 out of 10 ebony trees are not a consistent black color on the inside. But we cut 10 trees to find the one. To be clear, I'm not sure which species Bob Taylor is referring to there. But the first step to sustainable sourcing requires embracing aesthetic diversity. You cannot have pure black and sustainable sourcing. Sustainability, the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level, avoidance of the depletion of natural resources to maintain an ecological balance. The big players in the guitar industry are ahead of this. Sustainable sourcing begins with locating a sustainably certified supplier for ebony. Internationally accepted certifiers include the FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, PEFC, Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, SFI, Sustainable Forestry Initiative. The wood would be documented. Those documents travel with the wood through a chain of custody, which starts with the source, then goes to the loggers, sawmills, transporters, manufacturers, and eventually the retailers selling the end wood product. Certified sources of ebony are hard to find. Taylor Guitars created its own sustainable source by collaborating with a sawmill in Cameron called Crelicum Mill as a solution for their manufacturing. Another source of wood for guitar makers I talked to has started a sustainably certified rosewood plantation in Central America. Yamaha has its own plantation for ebony as well. Violin makers might not purchase sawmills and plantations, but with time, international coordination, and money, we could create a sustainable supply chain for some ebony. Based on Taylor Guitar's statements, sustainable ebony will be more expensive, available in smaller quantities, and cosmetically more diverse. Even with sustainable ebony, we would need alternatives to supply a growing market. Ebony myth number 2. Yes, Virginia, there are other hardwood trees as strong as ebony, but do we recreate the same problem? The left-hand side of this chart is temperate hardwoods. The right-hand side of the chart are tropical hardwoods. The only temperate hardwood that comes close is hickory. Unfortunately, it has a low hardness rating, around 1800, which means we would be dressing fingerboards a lot more frequently. But if you jump over to tropical hardwoods in South and Central America, there are roughly 7 other woods that could structurally match ebony, shown on the right-hand column of this chart. Be aware that 2 of these, rosewood and bubinga, are probably on CITES Appendix 2 already. Why not use these? Because it is like chasing the Holy Grail in the Monty Python skit. We're recreating the same problems we have with ebony. Sustainability, cosmetic variation, structural variation. It's just ebony with another name. The search will never end. So let's look at man-made alternatives. Technological advances have given us alternative materials to ebony and some exciting solutions to old problems. But let's keep in mind our goals as well. Protecting genetic diversity, sustainability, structural strength and consistency, and not leaping from one good environmental crisis to another. Let's start with compressed wood. I'm going to use sauna wood as the example because of their emphasis on sustainable sourcing. Sauna wood is a material created in Switzerland with a grant to produce a sustainable, environmentally friendly alternative to ebony for the music industry. Very smart engineers were given a lot of money to give us an alternative to our addiction to ebony. Simplified, they designed a machine to compress woods, spruce, beech, and maple to the physical specs we need to replace ebony. There are no added resins. It is a physical process. In fact, you could argue they created an improved ebony wood. It is structurally stronger, sound travels more easily through it, and it is slightly harder, so fewer fingerboard dressings. They also work to find sustainable sources of the temperate woods they use. For luthiers, you can use the same tools. Your blades dull a little faster because it is harder, but planes, chisels, files, and sandpaper work well. The compressed wood is more consistent, so there is less tear out. It is wood, so we can use hide glue. Why isn't everyone using it? First, sauna wood was developed right before COVID, so just bad timing. Second, cost. Manufacturers, shops, and makers in the music industry tend to discount the cost of labor relative to the cost of material. We also tend to customize products like fingerboards. This leads to manufacturing inefficiencies, and we can't benefit from reduced costs associated with technology as much as we would like to. Industries standardize products to reduce costs. We tend to do just the opposite. Third, thickness of material. Consistent pieces of wood material become more rare and expensive as they get thicker and longer. Violin and viola fingerboards are comparable in cost with the finished ebony products because of their size. Cello and bass fingerboards get significantly more expensive. We're testing possible solutions, but it will take time. Fourth, color. We have been artificially coloring ebony for years to make it look consistently black. The dye process for sonnewood is more expensive. The manufacturer does not want to prioritize color over their environmental goals, so they're using natural dyes. They're honestly confused with musicians prioritizing the black color over the loss of ebony species. Another alternative are composite materials. Composite materials are a combination of two materials with different physical and chemical properties. When they are combined, they create a material which is specialized to do a certain job. The advantages of composite products are their structural consistency, ability to control aesthetics like color, and in large, standardized quantities, the ability to control cost. Their potential environmental disadvantages are often overlooked because we use these materials in so many products every day. Carbon fiber bows are a well-known example of a composite material. Carbon fiber, the material base, is mixed with a thermosetting resin called the matrix material to create a carbon fiber composite. For ebony alternatives, the material for the base are often a fiber from a wood source material, like wood fiber, wood chips, or paper pulp mixed with a thermosetting epoxy resin. If sustainability is a goal, the base materials and resins used in composites should be considered when choosing an ebony alternative. So the wood and paper pulp, we should be looking for sustainably sourced wood and paper pulp. For the resins, phenylformaldehyde resins, a petrochemical-based plastic, combined with a wood fiber like paper, have been used for decades. Taylor guitars used ebonol in the 1970s for their fretboards. Richlite, around since 1943, is a popular option for guitar fretboards today. Corine is an increasingly popular fingerboard option for the violin industry, but phenylformaldehyde resins come with environmental risks. Bioresins, a non-petroleum alternative, have been developed more recently to replace the petroleum-based phenylformaldehyde resins. Often they use lignin, rosin, or other natural products for their base. Guaiatone uses an FSC certified sustainable material which combines recycled paper with a bioresin. I just want to note, I don't think these health risks apply for the phenylformaldehyde resins apply to the finished product of the fingerboard. It has more to do with the manufacturing process and production of the resin. This chart gives a quick comparison of two sustainable man-made options to ebony. So you can see density, sound velocity, elasticity, compression strength, bending strength, and hardness. Guaiatone and sonnewood all compare favorably to ebony and in some ways outperform ebony as a structural alternative to ebony for fingerboards. Climate change challenges all aspects of our lives. It is exhausting, but we do not have the luxury of hiding. We need to start changing and making thoughtful choices. If we start now, we have some beautiful options and opportunities to solve entrenched problems. If we wait or repeat our mistakes with new names, I may get to commission a statue of the violin to go with the beluga whales and the sugar shack along the interstate to Burlington, Vermont. Thank you.